www.offthecorner.net. You're watching the Fact Project, and FACT, of course, is an acronym that stands for Fundamental African Centered Thought. The goal here on the Fact Project is to convey some thoughts and some facts and some information to members of our community. We have joining us today hardcore Pan-African Black nationalist Garveyite brother Senghor Baye. Peace, Brother Senghor. Thank you for joining us on the Fact Project this morning, brother.
Yeah, God morning, God Garvey morning, brother. And it's a pleasure always to be with you and your listeners.
Okay, so now I mentioned that you are a Garveyite involved with the Garvey movement. You're involved with the UNIA-RC 2020. UNIA, of course, is the organization that Marcus Garvey began, and you're still a member of that organization. What can you tell us about the goal and the mission of UNIA-RC 2020?
Well, actually, the goal and the mission has never changed from what the right Garveyites who worked with him had come up with in not just 1914, but actually 1920 and forward. The principle is actually to bring Africans worldwide together and to be more self-reliant and to return to our history, heritage, and culture, and to follow what the great ancestors prior to the UNIA were doing to put us back on track. Of course, many things have happened over 100 some odd years. When we say rehabilitating, we mean we are rehabilitating the government. Zion, excuse me. We're rehabilitating the government, and that's important because the race itself needs to be rehabilitated. We need to refocus and understand to carry on the works that were done in the 20th century by Garvey and Amy Joss Garvey and many other Garveyites. We have to update it in the 21st century style. A lot of things have transpired. Of course, Garvey traveled to a lot of places around the world and saw what was going on. Even though he never stepped foot on the continent spiritually, he was all over the continent, not only the UNIA. In 1920, Africans came from all around the world. So today I serve as the first assistant president general under the President General Baba Akili Nkrumah, who served as first assistant president general for 8 years under my tenure when I served as president general. We have been trained by people who were trained by Garvey to carry this thing forward. So we have a lot of Garveyites. We have a lot of people proclaiming the UNIA government, and that's okay. The fact of the matter is we're trying to keep everything on course because not only Urugu, the external oppression, but internally, a lot of our own people have caught the Yoruba virus. So I'm here today to talk about scientific Pan-Africanism in the 21st century.
Okay, now I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm titling today's talk, Do Original People Need to Organize for Power? Because you're part of a conference that's coming up. We're going to talk about the conference in a minute. But you mentioned scientific Pan-Africanism. First of all, how would you define Pan-Africanism? And how does that differ from scientific Pan-Africanism?
Well, that's a good one. There's a tremendous amount of people that practice or proclaim Pan-Africanism. In fact, even before 1900, when Henry Sylvester Williams and many came together and coined the term Pan-Africanism, there were people way before that, even in the 17th century, who practiced what we term as Pan-Africanism. As a universal African nationalist, I'm very clear that all people who proclaim Pan-Africanism are not necessarily race first. So to fast forward, to save a lot of time from talking about myself and how I view things, we working with a group called the PLM, and I'll talk more about what they're getting ready to do. But there's a book that was been done called Scientific Pan-Africanism, The Redemption, Reclamation, and Restoration of Pan-Africanism by F.A.C.T. He's a brother who leads the PLM, the Pan-African Liberation Movement. He's a great writer, a great organizer. And the UNIA has many aspects of Garveyism. Many different groups have come into existence since the UNIA was established. Of course, Garvey's original intent was to bring all of us together and to build institutions, movements, et cetera, that would connect to create a sovereign government on the continent of Africa. So scientific Pan-Africanism, I need to read a definition to you just so people are very clear, because we're not saying we're not Pan-Africanists. What we're saying is we're scientific Pan-Africanists. And the difference is, lastly, scientific Pan-Africanism is a clarification of Pan-Africanism. It is a fundamentally and revolutionary ideology designed to usher in African sovereignty. As a liberator praxis, scientific Pan-Africanism is designed to fulfill the following. 1, raise Black consciousness. 2, develop authentic Black leadership. 3, take a revolutionary stance against white terrorism, racism, capitalism, imperialism, colonialism, neocolonialism, New Age domestic colonialism. 4, champion the cause of Black liberation. And 5, forge a revolutionary process to facilitate self-determination for African people to usher in African sovereignty. Thus, the best way forward for Black people is Pan-Africanism. Scientific Pan-Africanism is pure Pan-Africanism. Now, the reason I share that is because people get confused about ism schisms, and we use the Yoruba language, so it sometimes become confusing, but Pan simply means all around. African is Africans. We're African. Marcus Garvey said we needed to be science par excellence. So in being science par excellence in the 21st century, we have merged to do work with the PLM and our good brother who wrote this book. Now, of course, our international organizer, the UNIA RC 2020, has been working on this very thing to try to clarify in the minds of African people. First, all of this stuff that's going on, we're clear we're African regardless of where we are in the world. We're also clear we need to come together. We're also clear to get sovereignty and control of Africa, we need to organize. So all groups need to come together. So I hope I was very clear. So, because a lot of people are still confused and will continue to be confused even when we speak truth to power. But we ain't got time for confusion and discontent, which mark the path of man. But with love, peace, and charity to it all, over in a peace and plenty, as Garvey and the preamble to the Constitution says, then we will be able to bring together African people in love and reclaim our sovereignty and continent, which essentially will usher us into really what I call Blacktricity power.
Okay, now there are some people who are claiming to be Pan-Africanists, but they're not kind of conveying the same message you are. Some are leaning heavily on something like voting. What do you say to those people that say that they're Pan-African, but they rely more on voting than anything else?
Well, as I said, most people don't understand the importance of the concept of Pan-Africanism. First of all, you can't do anything anywhere if you don't have a knowledge of yourself. That's why it's so important for us to understand scientific Pan-Africanism. And then we need to understand that it's no offense to those brothers and sisters that choose to integrate, but we're not integrationists. We don't want to integrate with any systems. We want to build our own systems. And that is why we are in the condition that we're in right now, is because we are working and trying to rise under somebody else's systems. And those systems are not designed for the love for humanity. You can see that all around. So I say to those brothers and sisters that you need to become conscious of who you are, conscious that we built the pyramids, yet we live and settle for projects.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. Years ago, Malcolm X said it's hard to mobilize a sleeping people. And if you're talking about those people that are conscious, how do we raise the consciousness of those people that are not conscious? Or do we just move on and say everybody's not going to make it?
No, we have to keep on trying to fish, and we have to keep on trying to provide the truth. We have to continue to work to build institutions. Independent schools is the best way to go. Of course, we know we've been miseducated, as Dr. Carter G. Woodson so clearly articulated long ago, and how it continues to move in his group called Asala. But the reality is, until we control our own educational means, until we control our own social services, until we control our own governmental politics, until we control our own security, until we control the production of our own food, until we control the production of our own living situations, and until we control industry, we are not going to get the kind of return to our traditional greatness. Now, let's be very clear. We've been great and in peace and harmony on this planet far longer than we've been subjugated to the systems of Yorugu virus. So you can't tell me it can't be done. In fact, we've built their systems. That's another thing. Some black people have caught so much the Yorugu virus. Malcolm X used to say we've been hoodwinked, bamboozled. We've been bamboozled to try to be something that we are not. And so if you're trying to be something that you're not, then you don't have any chance of raising up to your back traditional greatness. So we don't say no, let no religious scruples and no political machinations divide us. So no matter what you call yourself, you need to understand your root is Africa and African.
Most definitely. Now you got you familiar with Brother Shamari out of Philly?
A little bit. I know name. I don't know him that well.
Okay, he says something along the lines of what you're saying. He says we need to bring about Black life. Life is LIFE, liberation, independence, freedom, and empowerment. Is that the same thing that you're referencing?
Yeah, it's a lot of ways to terminology, but that's why we got to be scientific. And that's why we're doing this Race First convention coming up. And we're not hosting that. We're being a part of that. The PLM is hosting it, the Pan-African Liberation Movement. And under the leadership of Brother F.A.C.T, who recently wrote the book Scientific Pan-Africanism. Now, this book was based on research all the way back to the 1700s. So we're not just talking about the Garvey movement. We're talking about all conventions that have been held, something positive have come out of them. It's not a conference. It's not a talk shop. We have work tables. We have 12 different working groups. And out of that is going to come a direction and unification. The UNIA has something that we consider called a Mahat Agreement, that we're working to get that with various different institutions and organizations so we can stop fighting each other over our differences and work more on the table of what we have in common. So the PLM has taken a step, and not only that, they are grassroots building from the ground up, little children all the way up to adults. And they're very, very conscious, and they're building in BMO Tubman City. So they've done Race First rallies for the last 5 years around the country. And a lot of people outside of the so-called contiguous United States is also timed into this whole concept of Race First. So we do those rallies. Now we're doing a convention and bringing people to the table, the likes of Marimba Ani, the likes of Brother Baruti, two giants amongst us elders, and myself, the President General of the UNIA, and many others, leaders of appeal, leaders of many hip-hop organizations and groups who understand the concept of Race First. Now, to get to Race First practical application, we need to be scientific about it. So that's why the coin Scientific Pan-Africanism is so important.
Okay, we're going to come back to the conference and talk about time, date, and who's going to be speaking and so forth and so on. But do original people need to organize for power? And if so, why?
Yes, everybody does. You need to cast your bucket down where you are, as Booker T. Washington said. You have to organize regardless of where you are. If you don't organize within your own family, your own community, and then nation, and then nations, then where are you going? You got to organize. And we're going to stop depending upon the handouts from the system, because the system gives the handouts so that they can keep you hoodwinked, so that they can continue to control your destiny. When we say one God, one aim, one destiny, we know that we are the first human beings on the planet. In fact, every human living comes from us. Now, that's a whole nother thing. But if you're scientific about it, we didn't create the terms Mongoloid, Caucasoid, and Negroid. They did. But we are African, and we understand that clearly. And even though we still use the name Universal Negro Improvement Association, we also African Communities League. So we're not caught up on nomenclatures. So we're not caught up on, are you black? Are you this? But we know that rather than say you're African American, you need to be an African, and you need to also think in terms of how powerful Africa is, because the whole world cannot exist without Africa. And Africans should never be on the bottom of a continent that they are traditionally have ancestry with. We should never be on the bottom of the rung. And we are, because we've been hoodwinked, and out of love, we've been coerced by various different people who got the pus of, I like to say what Remember Ani says in her book, Urugu, the Urugu virus. People say white people, but I'm going to make it clear. It's the Urugu virus that's in mostly white people. And now, because we've been so hoodwinked, black people hold up the Urugu virus, or have it themselves. Francis Cress Welsing made that particularly clear to us.
Yeah, we got Ms. Cooley in the chat said religion and politics are divisive tactics. And it seems the system goes very hard trying to divide us, which makes us weak. But why us? Why people of African heritage? They don't go that hard against Chinese people, East Indian people, Korean people. Why do they go so hard against people of African heritage?
Well, first of all, a lot of people around the world practice, as Garvey said, race first. And if we are clear, if we practice race first, we will understand why they have taken out, first of all religions, all systems of spirituality come from Africa. That's a fact. In fact, all politics come from Africa, okay? But we've been coerced into thinking from a European mindset or a Urugu mindset, and consequently those religions, whether or not it's Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, and you can name them, all of them have been tainted to mislead us away from the real spiritual power of who we are. Now, we're not saying we anti any of them, but we're pro-spiritually based, meaning we want to go back to our African tradition. So whether or not you're Akan, whether or not you're Yoruba, whether or not you're Kemetitian, whether or not you're Voodoo, or whether or not you're any of the traditionals, you all need to understand that whatever tribe you're with, you need to be African. And that means we need to have love and unity amongst all of us and to go back to our traditional greatness. So that's why Garvey said, let no religious scruples and no political machinations divide us. That's what the person that put in the chat was really saying. We have allowed religion to divide us. We've allowed politics to divide us and machinations. That cannot happen. So consequently, we got to go back to our source. That's why I say Blacktricity, and that's why it's critical for us to understand that the whole world comes from us, and we need to return back to our traditional greatness. Segue into what Chief Fode says in terms of his book, which I'll talk later about, and I think you've got the information there, but I'll pull it up if not. Gullah sovereignty, because over 80 to 90% of the people in North America have Gullah heritage. And we forget that the Gullah culture is tied directly to Africa. And we have to understand that that's something that hasn't been taken away from us. And because of people that are confused about the importance of being tied to Africa from a spiritual perspective, we've got caught up in too many other religions that are practicing the Yorugu virus, which takes us away from our Most High God and gives us a God that is not ours. We must see the Creator in our own spectacles, not nobody else's.
Okay, now you often use the expression Blacktricity. How do you define that?
Well, Blacktricity is simply what I just defined. Like, years ago, that concept came to me from a vision from the ancestors that Blacktricity is the source of all life and love. So everything living has to have Blacktricity. Electricity is produced by putting it in a plug, but that's created by man. Blacktricity is a natural phenomenon, a natural means for us to love one another, hug one another. You share Blacktricity. Our great music is Blacktricity. All things that are positive that bring you into consciousness are actually Blacktricity. So when I say Blacktricity, I'm speaking not only about us as Black melanated people, but all life comes from the source of Blacktricity, i.e. going back to the Most High and our ancestors. That is connecting with Blacktricity. And let me say, when I speak of the ancestors, I'm not speaking of the dead. I'm speaking of the living, because we're spiritual beings having a physical experience, not physical beings having a spiritual experience, but spiritual beings having a physical experience. And once you're no longer having a physical experience, your spirit continues to live on. So our ancestors are very much alive.
Okay, so we got the Race First conference coming up. What can you tell us about that in terms of like place and date and so forth?
Well, first of all, the Race First conference, the Race First convention is designed to bring together more unification of brothers and sisters of like minds, young and old, new and old, and to bring institutions together. And brothers and sisters need to organize. So it's a means to organize ourselves. And 12 roundtables are going to be set up where we're organizing breakout sessions where we're actually dealing with various different topics. I won't go all into them, but I will say it's important to know that it will be located. First of all, it's on the 26th, 27th, and 28th of September. From 5 p.m. to 8:30 p.m., it will be a meet and greet. And that'll be at 5525 Hartford Road, Baltimore, Maryland, 21214. Day 2, the 27th, is from 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. The conventions will be in session at the Baltimore Unity Hall at 1505 Utah Place. That's EUTAW Place, Baltimore, Maryland, 21217. We will reconvene on the 28th, the third day, from 11:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. The convention will continue to be in session at the Baltimore Unity Hall at 1505 Utah Place, Baltimore, Maryland, 21217. Now, it's very important for people to register, even though it does not cost anything to register. There will be vendors in place, and there is an opportunity for you to make donations. However, if you go to www.plm95.org, you can register for the convention. You can also donate at Race First Movement. That's Cash App, of course. And you can also email them at plmbaltimore@gmail.com. Some of the elders that will be present, I said Marimba Ani, Brother Mike Mazie, Mwalimu Lacey Lumumba, Mwalimu Baruti, Baba Khalil Bey, Mama Makina of Appeal Incorporated, Ayo Shango of the IFA University, and the UNIACL RC 2020 will have myself and Baba Akili and several other active members present. Those lists were not people who will be speaking per se. They will be talking, but they will be in workshops. But those are elders who have been around for a long time, who have done a lot of work, myself included, and we have been called and put on there as elders confirmed as attending. There will be many other elders there, but many young people will be there. The PLM is a very, how should I say it, a youth-driven group. They build with young people from infant all the way up to adulthood. They have all kinds of independent Saturday school programs, homeschooling, and quite a few things that they're doing. They have manhood training, womanhood training, and they are serious about building. They are the ones hosting this convention. So we suggest that if you're not going to come, listen out for the outcome of it, because I can't guarantee you that it's going to be streamed. I don't think they're going to do it that way. I think it's going to be more closed session, but all roads lead to Baltimore if you can get there. But stay in tune, because this is not a talk shop. This is a working convention. Just like in 1920, when the UNIA met, when Africans came from all around the world and established the Declaration of Rights of Negro African Peoples of the World. That's similar to this. But there were also conventions held in the 1700s and the 1800s, etc., that good things came out of. And so we need to understand that when most of the time when conventions are done to African people, they're done to do work. And out of that comes work. The UNIA just held its 67th International Convention here in DC. We were laying down work. We did have some public sessions for the community to come out so that they could taste the energy of Garveyism in the 21st century. So we are happy that our young brothers and sisters who are conscious have now coordinated and organized an opportunity for us to come together. So I'm looking for the hip hoppers. I'm looking for those that love reggae. I'm looking for those that love Pan-Africanism, universal Pan-African nationalism, and groups that they have, whether they're institutions, schools, etc., or movements or political organizations, to be there and present, or to send representatives there. Like Us Lifting Us, for an example, in Atlanta, they're going to have reps there. Appeal's going to have reps there. These are economic engines that are being established, because we know we're on the bottom of the economic rung too, but we also have various different political groups that will be present.
Okay, so we are on the lowest rung of every metric in society, socially, politically, and economically. That's correct. And we do need to organize and come together. But normally when we hear of a convention, and I'm not going to mention any names, but normally it's just a rap and clap. Black people come together, do some rapping and do some clapping, everybody goes home. With this convention coming up, is there going to be a plan of action? Is everyone going to leave with instructions to do something when they go out the door?
Absolutely. That's the purpose of it. Okay. The Race First rallies that were held all across the country for 5 years were leading into this convention. There are organizations that are doing great work that don't even know other organizations exist like them. So that's number one. Number two is those that have work. Bring your work to the table. Bring your ideas, bring your plans to the table so we can interface with each other and we can build so that we can come out of this. When we say race first, we mean we're dealing with African people only, and we're not caught up in no integration. We're not talking about the Democratic or Republican Party. We ain't talking about the problems of Yurugu, where it relates to what they do. We are talking about the issues and problems that we are confronted with by the oppression of the Yurugu and the virus. But the fact of the matter is, we can do, as Garvey said, man can do what man and woman have done. So it's nothing that we cannot accomplish. The issue is we have all that we need. We lack the unification, practical, to build. We need to build industry. We need to build all, like you say, there's so many areas. That's why we had these 12 breakout groups that are critical, because they're going to be specific groups that address these particular issues. Now, everything ain't going to be done there at the convention. We're going to do as much as we can in the time that we have, but we are going to come out with some kind of declarations and some kind of direction that we will be spreading to other people that may not have the opportunity to be present with us, so that we can also invite them into the work that's going forward. So it is a working convention, brother.
Okay, now, Brother Senghor Baye, the Republican Party is no longer the Republican Party. It's the MAGA Party now. Is this conference a response to MAGA in any way at all?
Well, yeah, it's a response to our apathy of not taking charge of our own destiny. So we don't have the power to provide security for ourselves, to provide food, to provide clothing, to provide living situations for ourselves. That's critical. So this is a self-reliance move. So it does answer that, but it does not focus on that, because too many of our people are waiting for the Democratic Party to take back control. But we call that the UNIA. I'm not saying the PLM. We call that the Democratic Party, and we call the Republican Party the Reptilian Party. They can call it MAGA or whatever they want, but the reality is they're trying to push things back. And if you look clearly at what's happening, when they say they want to make America great again, that means they want it under their foreign control. Now, let's be very clear. They're not indigenous to this landmass either. So they are very concerned about their existence. So they, out of fear, you see all of this stuff going on. But we have survived even worse. We survived the transatlantic slave trade. We made it through. We're here. We've survived all kinds of stuff. But every day they're killing us through poisoning in our food, poisoning in our minds. So yes, the answer to your question is yes, but it's not a direct focus on them. It's a more focus on us being organized, so that we can protect ourselves against any oppression that may come against us.
Okay, Brother Senghor, there are some people among us who deny their African ancestry and say that we were already here and we're indigenous to the land, as if we didn't originate in Africa. What is your opinion on the diaspora war that you see going on now, especially on the internet?
They've been hoodwinked. It's a divisive tactic, simple as that. They don't know their history. They haven't studied. They think they have, but what they do not understand is the whole world comes from Africa. The whole world comes from Africa. You can't get around that. Even the Urugu science says that. That's not just our science. They know that. They know that the first human beings came from Africa. Now, technically, the indigenous people of this land were more melanated than Europeans. And you could call them Indians all you want. But I contest that Africans and the Mongoloids, which come out of what is called Indian, were blending way before Christopher Colombo and Europeans even came here. So when you talk indigenous, you're talking about indigenous African people who were actually here. And if you do your history, all you got to do is do your history. And so the fact of the matter is the indigenous people of North America were not Urugus, not Europeans. Okay, so I understand what on one hand, but to be divisive is to say that Africans weren't here already. That's not true. African people were here in North America before the transatlantic slave trade. All you got to do is just do your history. We traveled the world, but we didn't travel the world to conquer the world. You see, we traveled the world to blend and learn from the world. And that's a fact that we blended with a lot of people everywhere. You can go back to Europe, you can go back to China, you can go back to India, you're going to find Africans. And that's a fact that maintains itself. Runoko Rashidi, who's out traveling ambassador, he's an ancestor now, of course, but he's still out traveling ambassador, has traveled to over 125 so-called nation states, countries. There's over 3 million Africans in India alone. So when you start looking at all of the Africans that exist in South America, in the Central America, and then North America, and then all around the rest of the world, you'll see that Africans are the majority. We're not of a minority, you know. So this business about a minority, yes, we might not be a majority in North America, but we're a majority in the Western Hemisphere and the Eastern Hemisphere. And you can also say that it may be more Africanoid people than Caucasoid people. I mean, than Mongoloid people. But that's a whole nother ball game, because you can go back to ancient China and Japan and find Africans, brother.
That's
The
right.
original ninjas were black, and that's a fact. Our history has been done. See, we've been hoodwinked and misled and given somebody else's history. So people pick up on all these new ideologies that are designed to divide us. Anybody with melanin that say they ain't from Africa don't know their history, period.
Yeah, basically. Now, Chief O'Day is going to be involved with the conference coming up, right?
Not really. Chief O'Day, well, he's always involved with the Race First work, but Chief O'Day is based on the continent. He is our third assistant president general.
That's right.
So he won't be. Hold on one second.
Yeah, so we're talking to Brother
David, I call you right back, man.
Senghor Baye, who is a member of the UNIA RC 2020. And he's talking about an upcoming Race First conference that's coming up in Baltimore. It's going to be 5525 Hartford Road in state of Maryland. So anyone in the DMV area or any surrounding area, if you can travel to this conference. Brother Senghor, before we talk about the book, what's the date of the conference? Say the date again.
It's the 26th, where we will be at that address you just said, for the reception. But the actual convention is going to be at 1505 Utah Place. And that's day 2 and 3. So day 1 is at a different venue, but that's just a meet and greet, as we got people coming in. You mentioned out of the country, we have our ambassador of the UK, Brother Shakara, who will be coming. Brother Chief O'Day will not be coming, but Chief O'Day is doing the kind of work that we're doing. And his particular book now, which is an online book, can be gotten. And I haven't pulled it up. I guess you can see that.
I got it on the screen now.
Well, you can tell people how they can reach out to him, because it's a mere $15. It's very important because it talks about Gullah sovereignty. Now, the Race First Convention is designed for Race First to take us to sovereignty. So it's important for people in North America to understand your Gullah ties. Now, whether or not you are practicing any kind of Gullah culture, that's not the issue. The issue is, if you came from the South, which most people in North America migrated from the South, not just the Carolinas, but Georgia, Florida, etc., you have some type of Gullah history with you. That's a fact. All you got to do is ask your relatives, and you do a DNA test, you'll find out. And then that traces back all the way to the continent. And Chief O'Day happens to be a master of that and has done extensive research, and there's 3 easy steps for you to get that book, which is an online book, and it's powerful. It's called Gullah Sovereignty, and it will educate you on how important the Gullah culture is, not just the fact that you're Gullah Geechee or you respect that, you come from Charleston and you Gullah Geechee. All black. I got Gullah ties. I got family ties. Most people can trace their family, have somebody that was connected specifically to the Gullah history. And then when you do your your DNA test, which we recommend you do that, if you do that through African ancestry, you're going to find how those ties lead you to various different places in Africa.
Now, I know, because I spent some time on African culture. You mentioned the word culture. When the white anthropologists first started going into the interior of Africa and studied the people, the first thing they noticed was the fact that the people had an exceptional amount of group solidarity, group loyalty, and they practiced collectivism. So that individualism that you call it the Urugu virus, that's not our culture. In addition to that, relationships one to another they noticed that was also very important. In addition to that, respect for ancestors was something that was always held in high regard. Respect for elders was always something that was held in high regard. Being in tune with nature and not destroying the environment and so forth. All of these things constitute African culture. That's a short list. The list is a lot longer than that. But does Chief O'Day's book, does it go into those aspects of African culture?
Yes, somewhat. When I say somewhat, that was the whole purpose of the Gullah Geechee tradition in the Carolinas and etc., where they knew. First of all, let me give credence to an ancestor, Brother Oduno Tariq, that says there's no culture before agriculture. And I want to stress that because you mentioned nature. So agriculture, if you're listening to the word agriculture, that means your culture was tying you to the earth, to the land. So in terms of the Gullah sovereignty, that's exactly what Chief Foday does. Not just the land in the south of the U.S. of A., but the land on the continent of Africa. So we were the best rice growers. That's why we were caught up in the Gullah Geechee so-called captivity, because the European knew that we had Africans that knew how to grow rice, and that was a major issue. So, but we were growing food for them. It's not just growing food for ourselves. So in getting back to self-reliance, we need to understand that if we could grow food for the oppressor, we can grow food better for ourselves. I segue back to the continent, and you mentioned the cultures. That's another thing. We need to build industry. We need to continue to do agriculture development. And that's where the unification comes, no matter what your subculture may be. If it's African, if you consider yourself an Akan, if you consider yourself a Yoruba, or if you can, it's so many others I could name. I'm just naming the ones that most people are familiar with. If you consider yourself a Kemetician, if you consider yourself a Voodoo, all of those people needed to eat. So in order for the village to eat, they had to be agricultural specialists. So in getting back to the land, as you mentioned, it's critical for us to understand how important sovereignty is. We need to control not just the minerals that come from the land, but we need to control our living and ties to the land. And Africa, being our own vine and fig tree, is the best place to do that at. However, wherever you are, you need to grow your own food, learn how to do that. That is a part of our culture. And last but not least, the Mobutu. We are our brother and sister's keeper, and they are our keeper. That's where that love comes. And Mahat, because sometimes we start fighting over our differences, and we spend more time fighting each other rather than the fight and oppression together to get off our backs.
Yeah, I agree with that. Now, you use the word sovereignty, which I don't have a problem with, but I say in order to be fully sovereign, you must first have self-sufficient control of your food, clothes, shelter, education, medication, and self-defense. What about this concept of self-sufficiency? You're not overlooking that, are you?
No, absolutely. In fact, everything I've said thus far is designed for you to be self-sufficient. If you see what's going on in the Sahel states right now, not just Burkina Faso, but Mali and Niger, it's important for us to recognize that they're moving in a direction that Sheikh Anta Diop told us we needed to federate, and they have already established a co-federation. So those nation states have cut across their borders, and they are sharing with each other. They are now controlling what comes out of the land. They've run Urugu, primarily the Urugu French, out of those areas, and they're moving to build a federation, a co-federation, which could ignite the rest of the continent to be more self-reliant. That's not taking anything away from, and when I say nation states, I don't call them countries, because we did not divide that up at the Berlin Conference. You have brothers and sisters that live in Togo, live in Ghana, live in Burkina Faso, that all belong to the same tribe. So the reality is, in carving up the continent, that was the first geographical divisiveness that was done, and we weren't there. That was all the Urugus there dividing up the continent to see who was going to take the resources out of what area. So what we need to do is to take that back. Sheikh Anta Diop laid it out to us of how we needed to federate. Garvey was clear. Marcus Garvey was absolutely clear. He said, Africa for the Africans, those at home and those abroad. So regardless to whether or not you're abroad, Africa should still be in a position where they can support you. There should be one military. I'm going to say that again. One military to support all African people worldwide. We got to do that. That is based around security. So naturally, we have to go back to the land. And it's very important to recognize that I said blacktricity, anything living that comes out of the earth has blacktricity.
Okay, so you mentioned Burkina Faso, and we had you on a couple months back, and you elaborated in depth on that. It seems there's still a lot of turmoil going on over there in the Sudan. Now, you talked about us having one military, and I get that concept. How do we get the brothers in Sudan to get the message and get on board with this Pan-Africanism that's beginning to grow on the continent?
Okay. I really don't have the answer that I can put out to that, but I am part of it. I know that if we practice race first, especially on the continent. See, let's be clear. Most people on the continent know they're African, okay? So we don't need to get them to understand they're African. But what we do need to get them to understand is race first, because everybody else is on the continent too. not just Africans, Chinese, et cetera, et cetera. I could go down the line with different people that are not indigenous melanated Africans that are on the continent, exploiting and using the continent for their own homeland, meaning they are there to develop the resources in Africa to return them back to their own homeland. That's a fact. Okay. So what we need to be very conscious of is that when we take charge of our destiny, it all depends on who controls the agriculture, the food supply, who controls building the houses for us, who controls security. That's all about self-reliance. That's what sovereignty is. It's not being independent. If you look at the independent movements that took place on the continent, look at what's going on still in Tanzania, South Africa. You know, they still are controlled economically by Urugu. So Namibia is a good example in what's going on there. So it's not just the Sahel states. There are things rising up, and young people are sick and tired of the foolishness. And we would like to get them to understand you don't need to come out of Africa. You need to take control of Africa. Sometimes they think coming out of Africa is the way. And some of us have been blessed to learn, you know, being spooks that sit by the door, how Urugu moves. But we don't need indigenous Africans coming out of Africa. We need to build in Africa. So we also need to take control of the educational source. We don't need the British controlling education. We don't need the French. We don't need Americans controlling the education on the continent. We need to be African-centered. And we got to get that message to our young brothers and sisters who are rising up to understand the importance of what you said earlier. Self-reliance leads to sovereignty.
Yeah, now, Brother Senghor, you got some brothers in Sudan. They're as black as the street with Afro hair, but they identify as Arab. And in some instances, they take on the way of the oppressor, and they unalive other black people.
Well,
go ahead.
You see, we need to understand that we've been hoodwinked and bamboozled. Africans everywhere, even on the continent, the ones that were not taken out, were miseducated, misdirected. And remember what we said earlier, let no religious scruples and no political machinations divide us. That has happened on the continent. And it's a fact that maintains itself. It's happened in South America. It's happened everywhere. Everywhere you find us, there's a divisive tactic to have us pit each other against one another. And so we've taken on foreign cultures, foreign ideologies that have caused us to go to war with each other. The Urugu virus, as I said earlier, is in many of us. We're not traditionally a violent natured people. But when you take on somebody else's virus that is violent, you become as violent and you become your own worst enemy. So the divisiveness that's taking place on the continent is similar to the divisiveness taking place all around the world. Divide and conquer. That's what it's called. So while we're fighting one another, here comes the Urugu taking all the resources. The Sahel states are fighting back so-called, they call them rebels, but I call them those with the Urugu virus, criminals that are striving to do everything they can to take power, because we think power is found in material. Power is not found in material. Power is found in spiritualism. Because as I say, we're physical beings having a we're spiritual beings having a physical experience. And once your physical experience is over with, you have nothing on a physical level, but you have the spirit to hold on to. That same thing applies to your mind. We have been in what is called mental slavery all around the world. And it's no different on the continent, in the nation state, the Sudan, and all of that places, the Congo, etc. They keep us divided and fighting one another while they come and steal our resources. So it's a game that the Urugus played. Malcolm X laid it out. Garvey's laid it out. Even Martin Luther King laid it out. Many of our ancestors laid it out. Sister Nzinga laid it out. So many Africans' ancestors explained to us the do's and don'ts of playing into the Urugu virus, but still many of our people are caught in the material game. Look at the other leaderships on the nation states in Africa, for an example. If the people are not getting food, clothing, and shelter, who is responsible? The leadership. And if the leadership is following a Urugu virus, now you got it. So you got black people that are oppressing black folks. Our own kinfolk our own skin folk all ain't kinfolk in terms of moving back to our own control. So they're abused as pawns. Malcolm talked about the house Negro and the field Negro and the house Negro coming through the transatlantic slave trade. You know, you had, unfortunately, you had some of our own people that were overseers working for the slave master, oppressing his own people. So, you know, it's the same game that's being played, and it's being played on us in Africa, and that is why we're not sovereign on the continent. And I can't, like I said, I can't give you a magic answer, but I can tell you that when we come into consciousness, we unite our consciousness, and then you will begin to see how divisive the so-called European control of the world is.
Yeah, I I agree with that. I think religion is a large part of the problem. Years ago, the great Omar Wali Malcolm X once said, you know, when we come together, leave your religion at the door. You know,
Yes.
Don't come talking about religion, because then that will cause a problem and it will cause a division. And so I see that as definitely a part of the problem. And Marcus Garvey was the one that conveyed the idea of race first. And you know, it doesn't matter what you embrace. You could be involved in religion. You could be a Muslim, or you could be a Freemason, whatever, you know, your fraternity, whatever group you're in. You could be in some kind of professional association of some sort. None of that really matters. I think we should just come together as original people and work from that place. You know, whatever religion or whatever other group you're involved with, that's great. But you know, like Malcolm said, I think you need to keep that in the closet. Now, the great Marcus Garvey talked about race first. Can you elaborate on what Marcus Garvey meant when he talked about race first?
Well, he said that most people are race first. That's outside of Africans. We need to understand that. When we talk about the Urugu virus, they race first. When we talk about the Chinese, they're race first. Meaning they take care of themselves before they look out to try to integrate with others. They take care of themselves first. And that we've got away from that. And that's why we got to get back to that. Marcus Garvey was absolutely clear. They give you a white God. They want you to worship a white God. You know, they whitewash everything. And so it's important. Why do they do that? To keep you away from yourself. So Garvey was absolutely clear when he said race first. He said Africa for the Africans, those at home and those abroad. When he said one God, one aim, one destiny, he said you need to see the God head in your own spectacles. You know, no matter what religion you deal with, if you're looking at God through someone else's spectacles, you're not going to find yourself. If we're made in the image and likeness of the Most High, then why are you looking outside of yourself and looking into somebody else as being controllers of that religion and Godhead? So it's important when we say race first, everything has to come with us first. And we're not saying we hate anybody. I want to stress that. See, some people think race first is racism. No, absolutely not. Racism is designed to oppress people. Race first is designed to get yourself together. And then after you got yourself together in control of Africa, control of our gold and diamonds, control of our land, control of our destiny, our food, control of our people, control of our women, control of our children, and not being killed, that's being race first. So when people come along today in the 21st century, they have got so caught up in integrating. They got so caught up in, well, party systems. The Democratic Party versus Republican Party. Most people don't know black people were more in the Republican Party during the time of Garvey than was even in the Democratic Party. So it's not about parties. It's not about ideologies. It's about having your own. It's not about somebody else's. It's not about an independent political party. You can do all of that. You know, you can be race first and still participate in all of those systems. But if you're race first, you're also working to build your own governmental structures. And if you look around the world right now and find out all the crazy stuff going on, it's because it's on the backs of black people everywhere. Everything going on right now is on the backs of our people. That's a fact. Even the fights that the Urugus are doing with each other, they're fighting each other because they want to control us. I want to make that clear. And Garvey said, while they're fighting, step out of the way and organize, because whichever one of them win, they're going to be coming to oppress you. So you taking on this thing, and you're absolutely right. Malcolm says, put your religion in the closet. If it's good for you, good. Don't beat your brother and sister up if they come and say they're Hebrew, or they say they're Yoruba, or they say they're Akan. They all are African. And we got more languages and dialects and so-called practices of spirituality than you can think of. But when it comes down to the unification of us as race first, that's when you have to sit all that aside. Malcolm understood it absolutely clear. And Malcolm was a practicing Muslim, but he understood it clear. His father was a preacher, okay? His father was in the Garvey movement. So Malcolm understood it clear. And then Malcolm ran into all kinds of oppression from us. You know, we say we were about Malcolm, but we didn't really heed what Malcolm was saying. Malcolm was the bridge with Brother Lumumba. You had the Organization of African Unity, but Malcolm established the African American Organization of Unity, see? And so what Malcolm was striving to do is to connect us to Africa. Malcolm and Lumumba were both born in 1925. That ain't no coincidence, okay?
And Kwame Nkrumah also, right?
No, not Kwame
No.
Nkrumah, not in 1925, but
Okay.
but there are others that were born in 1925, and you know, it's important for us to connect those dots because Malcolm Lumumba was so critical. That's why they killed him. Malcolm was so critical. That's why they killed him at a young age, because they were clear. And so, as the saying goes, how long will we sit aside while they kill our prophets and watch? I mean, still today, Ibrahim Traore, Thomas Sankara, okay? We can go down the line. There's so many Africans that have been killed because they came up with the concept. But we can't be afraid. That's what's got Yorugu beating down on us right now. They're afraid. They're afraid that they're no longer going to be in existence and we're going to come back to our power. And they're afraid of that. So they're doing everything they can to keep our own people confused. So we stay fighting one another and keeping each other, holding each other back.
Yeah, they're in a state of crisis. And I think January 6th is proof that they're in a state of crisis right now. So
absolutely. The same energy that they did on January the 6th here is the same energy we're experiencing right now. Same energy. Is that now they're in total control of the Yorugu government and control. Whereas before they saw them losing control, and so they marched on the Capitol. And that's a perfect example. I'm glad you shared that. We need to be clear, you know, and it's not about them as individuals. It's about their collectivism. You know, Project 2025 was written a long time ago, long before Trump came into existence. So we need to get off of that, thinking that soon Trump is gone, everything going to be hunky-dory. That's not true. You know, you can look back at even our own Barack Obama. He orchestrated the murder of Muammar Gaddafi. So we need to understand that it's the system. It's not so much individuals. And the same thing on our side. Black people get in the position of power and we start oppressing our own people. You're supposed to be an obedient servant. That's what Garvey taught us. If you're a leader, you're an obedient servant to the needs of the people, which makes you race first.
Yeah, I get it. So Race First Conference is coming up. Give the website and information again for people that might want to attend that.
Okay, it's www.plm95.org. That's how you register. And you can also get information there, but you can also go to plmbaltimore@gmail.com to email for information. It's very, very important that people register. You know, that's one way of us keeping track of who's there, to register. Don't just come walk in the door, register. And you can register by going to that online. That's very important because we need to know who's who and we need to know who's in the house. And so by registering, that helps us. And so once you come, then you'll get all the details and instructions on how to move forward. If you got any specific questions, don't really direct them to me necessarily. If you do reach out to me, you can reach out to me at Senghor Baye @hotmail.com, but I might have to redirect you to the PLM who is hosting this convention. We are not hosting it. We are participating with it. It's important for us to close ranks. It's important for us not always to think you don't got to give up your own group sovereignty when you come to this. You come, you got your own thing. We ain't telling you to give that up. We're not just trying to get you to come there so we can recruit you. We want to interface with each other. We want to learn from each other. And the hip hoppers are coming. When I talk about the hip hoppers, I'm talking about the conscious race first hip hoppers.
Okay. So let's hope they put that in the music after the fact. Help to spread that word.
Well, there is a group of brothers that come in that already are doing that kind of work in the music. And I'm working on a project myself that I'll just drop out there so people can look for it. It's called Spoken Dub. And for brothers that don't know, my spiritual son, Haru Aforaiata, we get ready to drop a genre that's going to a so-called genre of music that's going to reach out to everybody, and it's strictly Pan-African. Okay. So it's a lot of people doing that work, and that's important you mentioned that because we got too many people into arts and culture that are practicing Urugu virus. I don't care how big you get. If you ain't doing something around Pan-Africanism, you're not a Jolly Kunda. You're not a messenger. Music should be uplift our people, not to beat you down, not to fight each other. That's not our culture. But we got so mistracked by the wrecking industry, so-called record industry, and now that you can be independent, you ain't got no excuse because you can do your own thing. You got to be speaking truth to power. So hold back all your negative stuff and put some positive energy out there. We got enough negativity in the world. We need positivity. Yeah,
I think the music needs to do a better job at promoting a better social behavior because right now it's promoting diminished morals and it doesn't promote positive relationships among us. So I say every Black person should be an activist in some way or another. Some people do it through their music. Some people do it through their artwork. Some people like yourself do it through, your activism and all the work that you do on the ground. But I think every Black person should be involved in activism of some sort. Now, Brother Senghor Baye, last question. Give the names of the people that are going to be speaking at this convention. And go ahead.
I want to correct you again. It's not a talk shop. It's not a speaking convention. It's a working convention.
Okay.
The people that'll be there are elders, but they will be in the workshops. There may be an opportunity to be introduced, some folks and some words shared to motivate people, but it's not a lecture kind of a conference. It's a convention, a working convention. But Marimba Ani will be present. And for those who are not familiar with Marimba Ani, you need to Google her. MARIMBA ANI. Google her and you'll understand why she's so critical to the work that's going on. There are people like Brother Baruti, another powerful brother who's written many books, an African-centered scholar, expert in independent African-centered education. Brother Khalil Bey, another powerful brother. Sister McKinney, Mama McKinney, Appeal Incorporated, very powerful network. Brother Iya Shango, myself, Senghor Baye, and I got, a lot of hats that I wear, but it's not about me, he or she, it's about we collectivity. And to get back to true Blacktricity, you need to humble yourself to the people. And I'm a youth advocate and will stay a youth advocate. I've been a youth advocate for a long time and will always be a youth advocate. And then Baba Akili Nkrumah, the President General of the UNIARC 2020, and many others, named and not named, will be present. But it's not a thing where the elders are going to be preaching to everybody or what they should have, could have, and should be doing. We're going to be listening and learning from young people. Young people will be listening and learning from us. But most importantly, we will be rolling up our sleeves and working together so that we can move forward and come out this Race First convention with something. A lot of times we have conferences and we leave the conferences feeling good and nothing comes of it. Something's going to come from this.
Okay. So it's not your basic rap and clap. For the people that want to come out and hear what the plan of action going forward is going to be, definitely go to plm95.org so that you can register and be there. Now, Brother Senghor, is this going to be live streamed for the people that can't make it if they're out of state? Do you know anything about the live stream?
I doubt it. I doubt it seriously. There's been no talk about that because we don't want to provide this out to the world
Okay.
at this point. I'm not sure if it's going to be videoed. I'm not sure of that. But you can email the PLM and ask that question. But
Okay.
to my knowledge, it won't be live streamed.
Okay.
It's going to be in-house working session. And sometimes we depend too much on the so-called social media, and we telling our oppressor everything that's going on too at the same time. So I don't think that's going to be the case. I could be wrong. I'm not an organizer of it, but to my knowledge, that's not what's going to be happening. But I guarantee you the outcome will be put out to brothers and sisters of what comes out of it so that brothers and sisters can connect, because it's not a thing where we're going to make a plan and the plan is not going to be continued to be built on, or we're not going to be able to take more ideas and input from other race first people.
Okay, so
Chief F.A.C.T is a perfect example.
Okay. Brother Senghor, we want to thank you for joining us today, giving all of that information. A very powerful conversation. I would encourage everyone interested in registering for the event, go to plm95.org. The website again is plm95.org, and any information you need should be found on that website. Is that right, Brother Senghor?
That's correct.
Okay,
that's correct.
Now, Brother Senghor, after the fact, we got to bring you back on. Maybe you can touch on some highlights. Is that going to be possible?
Yeah, not only that, maybe I can bring some of the PLM. Maybe I can bring my brother on Imhotep, because he does a little show, and we got a lot of things that we have, shows that we do, as you know. And so we're going to be making sure that the word is out. But it's not about me. It's about we, collectivity. I want to stress that. I'm an elder. I've been around a little while, but the young brothers and sisters that are rising up need to rise up in the right way and to have the resources that we can give them, the knowledge, the wisdom, so that they can move forward and to continue the works of our ancestors. And by the way, many of our ancestors will be present at this convention.
All right, Brother Senghor, that's all we have time for. I want to thank everybody that joined in the chat. Cheryl Hudat. I can't see all the names now. Ms. Cooley, of course. Everyone that chimed in the chat, we want to thank everybody for joining us. And Brother Senghor, I want to thank you again for being here with us. And we're going to definitely follow up with you in a couple of weeks. We're going to bring you back on. If you could bring back some of the other elders and speakers and, experts that are going to be speaking at this event to kind of recap some of what happened, we would be very grateful for that, brother.
Absolutely. Consider it done.
Okay, that is Brother Senghor Baye joining us from UNIARC 2020 out of the Washington, D.C. area. Brother Senghor, stay safe and stay Pan-African, brother.
Thank you, brother. And y'all go in speed and know that our ancestors are waiting and watching. Children are crying and dying only because of our own apathy to understand the real reason why. And those of us that don't understand our cosmic assignment, everybody has it. Everybody can do something. Don't have to do everything, but everybody can do something.
Wow, there's an exclamation mark at the end right there. Brother Senghor, thank you, man. We'll talk to you again soon, all right?
Peace.
All right, brother. Peace.